Hello there guys, I am Wardy from SC2 Improve, and today I'm going to be talking about a Reactored Liberator opening in TvZ. The game that we're going to watch on the screen is a game from the Gfinity Cup a few days ago. I casted it. It was between Apocalypse and Dana, and this is one of the builds that stood out to me because on the ladder so far I have been loving Liberators. They have been so fun to use, and this opening in particular is very interesting because it actually forgoes the usual routine of TvZ, which is getting those early hellions out and using them for the map control and to stay alive early. It actually forgoes that. You skip that out. Instead you head towards a very fast Reactored Liberator sort of play, and you change a couple of things, and I really like it because it takes you into a position where you're ready to go into the mid game, and it keeps you safe. It keeps your opponent pinned back based on the fact you have two Liberators, which are so much more effective than just a single Liberator on its own. So we'll see how that goes as we get to it. This is obviously my first YouTube video of this sort of kind, so if you like it, please do let me know, and let me know how you think I could improve as well. Feel free to comment, and just let me know what you'd like to see in the future as well, because again, this is hopefully going to be the first of many YouTube videos which I do make. So we're on actually pre on terraces, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about how this build can work on other maps as well. And the way we're going to see Apocalypse open up here is fairly standard. He's going to be getting that Reaper out, and it's not going to be too crazy at all. It's a very standard Reaper expand up until this point. And after he takes this command center, once he starts his second depot, he's going to immediately start putting down a second gas. And one of the main things about this build is it's very important to get your gas timings right, because the gas is very limited. Because if you're reactoring out Liberators, that's very expensive. It's not cheap. That's 300 gas every time you make a set of Liberators. So you're going to need that gas on time, and especially to transition with as well, because you want to still be setting up for the mid game while you have your Liberators out on the map, keeping your opponent pinned back, keeping him busy, and hopefully getting some damage done. So as you can see here, first Reaper comes across the map, and a second Reaper is in production. So this second Reaper is, I think, quite important because we're going to skip out on the hellions. You can also see the second gas finishing now as well. So this is very important because the second Reaper, I think, kind of, do you need a second Reaper in TvZ so often? Well, if you skip hellions, I think you do, because it's a little bit of extra safety and it's a little bit of extra scouting, and that's going to be so important with this build where, again, you're very weak to things such as Bane lane busts because you don't have those hellions for the usual map control which you have. So it's kind of I think the second Reaper is definitely something you want to kind of keep investing into no matter what happens. As you can see, the build does get a third command center fairly quickly, just before the 3-minute mark here. And as you can see right now, factory and a reactor on the way. So it's still a fairly standard build, just a second gas added in, which isn't usually there if you're just opening, say, Reapers into reacted hellions third command center. So, I mean, it can kind of be like, it kind of looks like a Banshee build or so up until now, up until you get to this point here. So the starport gets added on, and we're actually going to see a reactor being built on this factory now. So the idea is that you actually use the reactor on your barracks to produce marines. So while you're not getting hellions out, you're not left with nothing until them Liberators come out. You actually have about 8 marines at the 5-minute mark. And right now we see Apocalypse is continuing to also move around with those Reapers, see what he can do, continue to harass. He adds on a bunker at the front. On this map, it's very easy to wall in, and I definitely think a safety bunker is going to be worthwhile as well. Again, you're playing kind of greedily, skipping out on those hellions, so anything you can do to maximize your safety and making sure you're not just going to die to something is always going to be useful. Alright, so coming up to the 4-minute mark, we're getting that starport onto the reactor. You can see we're just approaching 300 gas, and we're about to start reactoring out these Liberators. So this is what you've been building towards for the first few minutes of this game, and there we go, 2 Liberators on the way. So these first 2 Liberators, now, why 2 Liberators? Why is it so nice to reactor them out instead of just building 1 Liberator at a time? Well, you're going to see it very shortly, but it's because you can actually, with 2 Liberators, zone out so much better than you can with just 1. And we'll see that very shortly. Now we see the third gas coming down as well. And again, the gas times are so important because right now, after this Liberator open, you're going to keep building Liberators for a while. You can go to 6 or 4, depending on the situation. We'll talk about that in a moment or two. But you really want to have something else behind it as well. You want to start getting your stim pack up. Apocalypse actually invests into a tank as well for safety's sake, so he's going to get that now. And he also adds on his 4th gas. So again, it's very gas intensive, and while you don't have much production up, it's because you're building double Liberators, you're trying to get tank out as well, to have a little bit of extra safety back at home, and you're also going to then want to swap that barracks and start getting stim very soon while you start adding on your extra barracks as well. So we're going to see these liberators come across the map. So this is what we've all been waiting for. What is this build all about? Well, on this map, look at this. This is the positioning which made me actually love this build instantly and immediately want to try on ladder. This situation here is amazing because you set up in such a way that you actually just completely zone out queens from being able to hit them liberators. So you immediately need Ravagers to be able to deal with this. So already putting a bit of pressure on, still scanning around with the Reapers. Back at home, you're getting set up for the rest of the game. You're getting your third base into position. A little bit of an issue with them Zerglings there because again you don't have those Hellions. But as double engineering bay just finished, a couple of extra racks are starting up, so getting the rest of the production going and getting ready for the rest of the game now. A few more Liberators on the way in production, so you goes up to 6 Liberators in total. You could cut at 4. Depending on how well your initial Liberators are doing. I think what Apocalypse says is, hey, I am doing so much damage here with these first 2 that I don't need Medivacs just yet. I'm going to keep pushing my advantage right now. So we do see him, he actually loses a Liberator to a Ravager. But yeah, the 6-minute mark, 3 Liberators, a tank, a bunch of Marines, so you can finally start securing that third base. Next couple of Liberators come across. This isn't so great, so you kind of want to always keep them Liberators split up apart from each other. And that wasn't the best of positions to attack into either, because it doesn't really zone anything out. You know, the units can always come in from behind when you look at that position. But now if you look at this, we're pretty much done with the build order. He's got his stim pack on the way, +1/+1s on the way. He's got his extra racks up. He's actually got a lot of spare money, which could have already been invested into the rest of his barracks, and that's what he's going to add on now. So you get set up into a very standard mid-game here as a Terran player, slightly delayed upgrades, but that comes at the cost of, or at the trade-off of having been able to do damage and punish your opponent with those early Liberators and try and get something done from there. One of the important things in making this build work is using your Liberators effectively. On the right now, you're going to see one of the examples where at the start of the game, Apocalypse used his Liberators very effectively. So this build is very much so about finding maps with positions where you can set up 2 Liberators so that they're safe from pretty much anything apart from Ravager shots or multiple Queens, in which case you've been successful because you've either forced him into multiple Queens or you've forced him into Ravagers early on. Now, on the right, you can see an example of when it isn't quite so great. Position your Liberators in the middle of nowhere. This isn't good because you can see that anything can come from any angle and kind of outposition the Liberators. In this particular instance, is not good at all because they can both be shot down by a single Ravager shot. So finding the right position for your Liberators is very, very important when going for this build. So let's talk about the negatives of this Reactored Liberator opening. The majority of the negatives kind of come around based on the fact that you're actually skipping the Hellions. This gives rise to 2 main problems. The first of which, you kind of lose a lot of map control and a lot of pressure early on, which means the creep spread from a Zerg player becomes a little bit more out of control. Now that's kind of counteracted by the fact that if you can distract and annoy your Zerg opponent enough, in the lower leagues perhaps you're going to make him forget his creep spread. Now against a top player, they're probably going to keep on creep spreading anyways, but there's also the factor that if you are killing Queens and forcing Queens to come back and to defend the Liberators, then they're not out on the map and creep spreading. So while the creep spread is going to be a bit better than say if you open Hellions, you can still in some sense deny it, even if it is fairly indirectly. The second way in which kind of the lack of map control and the lack of Hellions kind of comes to bite you in the ass is the fact that when they go for something like a Ling Bane bust, now you do have your Reapers so you can scout, but then the question is, do you have enough to actually hold on? You really do need to know it's coming, know it's happening, so that you can get a couple extra bunkers up, get your Marines in those bunkers, and so you can also just keep a Liberator or so at home to start defending instead of being aggressive with those Liberators. So that's kind of the 2 main problems I feel with this build order, the fact that you're kind of stuck without those Hellions. And the other final problem, of course, is the fact that because your stim and your medevacs are delayed, you also lose kind of your first push of the game you usually have in TvZ. Now you still get that push, it's just a little later than usual, so again, it's going to be a little while longer until you're pushing that creep spread back. But again, that's all made up for in the fact that you have those earlier Liberators and you have them to pressure and to do damage with early on. Altogether, this build is basically a slight adaptation to what is going to become the very standard TvZ, where you get the liberators out a little bit faster, and you have a lot of marines instead of getting the hellions. So there's definitely a lot to play around with. Maybe you just want to put the factory back onto the reactor and, reactor out some hellions just for extra safety. Maybe you want to play around with not getting the tank. In general, if you see roaches, you want to get the tanks out. In general, if you don't see roaches, you want to keep making them liberators and continue to push that air dominance in case of mutalisks, etc. Great defensively and great offensively also. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the guide. If you have any criticisms or anything, I would love to hear it in the comments. Again, this is the first video I have done like this, so hopefully I've already learned a lot doing it myself, so I hope you guys can also help me to improve even further for the future. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you all next time.